don't need to be born charming. You need to understand what charm actually is. Stop scrolling. I know you've seen 100 self-help books promise to change your life. I know you've heard the words "become magnetic" thrown around like confetti at a New Year's party. And I know, because I've been there, that you've probably tried smiling more, talking less, making better eye contact, and still walked out of a networking event in Midtown Manhattan, feeling like you were completely invisible. So let me tell you something different right now. Before we even begin, the reason those tactics didn't work has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the fact that you were given surface-level instructions for a deep psychological problem. What you're about to read is not a list of tips. This is a complete rewiring of how you see yourself, how you see other people, and how the human brain is secretly wired to respond to certain individuals in certain ways. The science behind this is real. The results are real. And by the time you turn the final page, you will never walk into a room, a boardroom, a first date, a backyard barbecue, a job interview, the same way again. You ready? Let's go. The biggest lie you were told about charisma. Here's a scene that probably sounds familiar. You're at a company happy hour in downtown Chicago. The bar is loud, the drinks are cold, and somewhere across the room there's a person you've noticed 3 times already. They're not the most attractive person there. They're not the loudest. They haven't done anything particularly dramatic. But everyone gravitates toward them. People are laughing harder near them. Strangers are leaning in. The VP of marketing, who barely speaks to anyone, has been locked in conversation with them for 20 minutes. And you're standing near the appetizer table, holding your drink, wondering what in the world that person has that you don't. Here's what you were probably told at some point. Some people are just like that. That phrase is the most damaging lie in the history of human development. Some people are just like that is the story that keeps talented, intelligent, warm-hearted people stuck in the corner at every party, in the back of every meeting room, overlooked for every promotion they deserved. It's the story that turns a temporary skill gap into a life sentence of invisibility. And the worst part? The people you believe are just like that, the ones who seem effortlessly magnetic, don't believe it for a second about themselves, because they know, even if they've never articulated it, that what they're doing is a practice. It's a set of habits, instincts, and psychological patterns they developed, often without realizing it. Nobody is born charismatic, not the tech founder who commands a room of investors in Silicon Valley, not the pastor in Atlanta whose congregation hangs on every word, not the elementary school teacher in rural Ohio who somehow makes every single kid feel like the most important person in the world. What those people share isn't a gift. It's a code. And you're about to crack it. The real definition of charisma. Nobody teaches you. Most people think charisma means being impressive. They think it means being witty or articulate or physically striking. They think it requires being an extrovert, the kind of person who loves working a room, who never runs out of things to say, who somehow finds small talk effortless. That definition is wrong. Real charisma, the kind that creates lasting influence, deep loyalty, and genuine attraction, is about one thing: making the people around you feel something. The most magnetic humans on Earth aren't the ones who leave every interaction having demonstrated how smart or successful or interesting they are. They're the ones who leave every interaction having made you feel smarter, more interesting, more seen. Think about the most charismatic person in your own life. A mentor, a friend, a former boss, maybe a parent. What do you remember about them? I bet you don't primarily remember what they said. You remember how you felt when you were with them. You felt heard. You felt like you mattered. You felt, for a little while, like the most interesting version of yourself. That's the secret. Charisma isn't about broadcasting a signal. It's about tuning into someone else's frequency with such accuracy and such genuine care that they instinctively trust you, like you, and want more of you. The myth of the natural. Let's also destroy another destructive belief while we're here. The idea that truly charismatic people never feel nervous, awkward, or out of place. Wrong. Spectacularly wrong. Some of the most magnetic people I've ever studied, and the most compelling figures in American public life, have confessed to profound social anxiety. They felt like outsiders. They bombed conversations. They said the wrong thing at the wrong time. They spent years feeling like they didn't quite fit. The difference between them and the people who stayed invisible is simple. They didn't use discomfort as a stop sign. They used it as information. They learned that confidence isn't the absence of fear. Confidence is moving forward while fear is still in the back seat. It's doing the brave thing with shaking hands. And here's what that means for you. You don't need to stop feeling nervous before you become magnetic. You need to learn what to do with the nervousness. That's what this book teaches. The psychology of first impressions. Why you're repelling people without knowing it. Your brain makes a decision about every single person you meet before they finish their second sentence. This isn't an exaggeration. Research from Princeton University found that people form lasting judgments about trustworthiness, competence, and likability within the first half second of seeing someone's face. By the time 7 seconds have passed, your subconscious has already written a full first paragraph about this person's story. And the terrifying thing, you are doing that to them, and they are doing it to you. Right now, in every interaction, most people go into social situations thinking consciously, what should I say? Am I talking too much? Did that joke land? But while their conscious mind is busy with those anxieties, their unconscious body is leaking an entirely different story. One made of micro-expressions, vocal tonality, spatial behavior, and energy levels. And that subconscious broadcast is almost always the thing that determines how people respond to you. So, what story is your body telling? The scarcity signal, the biggest repeller in the room. There is one underlying psychological signal that repels people faster than anything else. It doesn't matter what you're wearing, what school you went to, or how good your opening line is. If you're broadcasting this signal, people will feel uncomfortable around you without knowing why. That signal is neediness. Neediness isn't about being broke or lonely. It's a mindset, a way of approaching interactions from scarcity rather than abundance. It sounds like this in your head. Do they like me? Am I being boring? I hope I don't mess this up. I should seem more interesting. I should agree with that. I don't want them to think I'm difficult. Every one of those thoughts is your nervous system broadcasting. I need something from this interaction. I need you to validate me. I'm here to get, not to give. And people feel that, not consciously, but in the way your eye contact gets slightly too intense or slightly too avoidant. In the way you laugh a half second too quickly at something that wasn't that funny. In the way you fill every silence with words, like silence itself is a problem to be solved. Your mirror neurons are doing this involuntarily, and so are theirs. When someone walks into a room radiating neediness, however well-dressed, however articulate, the people around them unconsciously categorize them as low value and create invisible distance. Here's the contrast. Think about someone who walks into the same room, radiating abundance. They're not loud. They're not performing. They're simply comfortable. Comfortable with silence. Comfortable being themselves. Comfortable giving attention without needing it in return. Your brain sees that person and thinks high value. Safe. I want to be near that. The shift from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking is the single most important psychological change you can make. And the rest of this book is about how to make it real, practical, and permanent. The Magnetic Mindset, 8 pillars that change everything. There's a moment in every person's development when they realize that social skills aren't really social skills. They're inner skills that happen to show up socially. You cannot fake your way to magnetism. You can use tricks for a night, maybe even for a week. But tricks don't compound. Character does. The most magnetic people you'll ever meet have built an inner architecture, a set of beliefs, habits, and mental frameworks that makes their attractiveness effortless and sustainable. Here are the 8 pillars of that architecture. Pillar 1. Other focus. Most people walk into social situations trapped in their own heads like a hamster on a wheel. How am I coming across? What do I say next? Are they judging me? This inner noise is the primary enemy of magnetism. Magnetic people have trained themselves to flip the switch. Instead of asking, what do they think of me? They ask, what is this person actually like? What matters to them? What's going on beneath the surface? This shift is not selfless. It's strategic. The moment you stop monitoring yourself and start genuinely exploring another person, something remarkable happens. You become interesting. Because you're the only person in the room who's actually there. Pillar 2. Abundance mentality. Every interaction, you bring something to the table. Your attention, your energy, your genuine interest, your care. You don't need anything back. You're not keeping score. You're not waiting for the scales to balance. This sounds almost spiritual, and in a way it is. But it's also deeply practical. When you approach someone without needing anything from the interaction, you become effortlessly relaxed. Your voice slows down. Your shoulders drop. Your presence becomes a gift instead of a request. People feel the difference in their bones. Pillar 3. Genuine curiosity. Not the polite surface-level curiosity of, oh, interesting, so what do you do for fun? But the deep, almost anthropological fascination with what makes this specific human being tick. Their contradictions, their quiet passions, the story behind the thing they almost said, but stopped themselves from saying. When someone is truly curious about you, it creates a feeling that is almost addictive, because most of us go through entire weeks, sometimes entire years, without anyone being genuinely curious about who we are. Pillar 4. Emotional independence. Your self-worth is not on the table in any interaction. It cannot be won by someone's approval or lost by someone's rejection. It is yours, generated internally, maintained through your own practices and values. This independence is profoundly attractive because it signals safety. When you don't need someone to validate you, they feel free to be real with you. There's no pressure to perform, no eggshells to navigate. Just 2 people, actually talking. Pillar 5. Energy stewardship. Magnetic people understand something most people miss. Every interaction is either an energy deposit or an energy withdrawal for the people involved. Most people are, without meaning to be, energy drains. They complain. They gossip. They fill conversations with low-grade anxiety. They scroll through their phones in the middle of a sentence. They make every conversation vaguely exhausting. Magnetic people are energy sources. You feel better after talking to them, more alive, more yourself. That's not an accident. It's a practice. Pillar 6. Secure attachment. This is what psychologists call the sweet spot between emotional availability and emotional independence. You can be warm without being clingy, interested without being overwhelming, present without being needy. This balance, connection without desperation, is one of the rarest and most attractive qualities a person can have. Pillar 7. State mastery. Your emotional state is contagious. When you walk into a room anxious, distracted, and low energy, the people around you absorb that, subconsciously but powerfully. When you walk in grounded, present, and genuinely interested in the world, that spreads too. Magnetic people take responsibility for their internal state before they show up in anyone else's life. They have practices, breathing, movement, mindset work, preparation rituals that help them arrive at their best. Pillar 8. Radical self-acceptance. Here is the paradox that changes everything. The less you're trying to hide about yourself, the more people want to be around you. When you've made peace with your imperfections, your odd sense of humor, your unconventional opinions, the fact that you cry at commercials or get obsessed with obscure historical events, you give everyone around you permission to stop performing too, and that feeling of being able to drop the mask. That's one of the most magnetic gifts one human being can give another. Presence, the silent language that speaks louder than words. Before you say a single word, you've already made an impression. Your presence, the way you carry your body through space, the steadiness of your gaze, the quality of your breathing, the grounded stillness of your movements, speaks in a language that bypasses conscious thought and goes straight into the ancient, primal brain of every person who sees you. And most people are completely unaware of what their presence is saying. Let's change that. Your relationship with Space Watch, the way different people enter a room. Some people move as if they're apologizing for existing. Shoulders slightly curled, movements tentative, eyes downcast. Their body language whispers, "I know I'm in the way. I'll try to take up as little room as possible." Others enter like they own every square foot, puffed up, shoulders back in an exaggerated way, occupying space aggressively. Their body language shouts, "I need you to know I'm important." Neither of these is magnetic. Magnetic people enter with what I call quiet belonging. They move as if they've always been here. Their pace is unhurried. Their posture is natural, not performed. Their eyes are open and interested, not scanning for threats or approval. They inhabit their body the way you inhabit a comfortable old chair, fully, without effort, without apology. The breath you're not thinking about most people, in social situations, breathe from their chest. Short, shallow breaths that keep the nervous system in mild fight-or-flight mode all evening. Magnetic people breathe from the diaphragm, slowly, deeply. This does 3 things simultaneously. It calms their nervous system. It lowers their voice slightly, creating natural authority. And it slows their speech in a way that makes everything they say feel more considered and more worth listening to. Before your next important interaction, a date, a meeting, a conversation you're nervous about, take 60 seconds and breathe. Long inhale, longer exhale. Feel the floor under your feet. Then walk in. You will feel the difference, and so will the other person. Eye contact, the most misunderstood. Tool magnetic eye contact is not about holding someone's gaze. It's about giving it. There's a difference. Holding someone's gaze can feel like a staring contest, slightly aggressive, slightly weird. Giving your gaze means offering your attention as a gift. It means being genuinely interested in what you see in this person's face, the way their eyes change when they talk about something they love, the split second of vulnerability before they answer a hard question. The practical technique: when someone else is speaking, give them steady, warm eye contact. When you are speaking, it's natural and comfortable to occasionally glance away, to think, to recall, to emphasize. Return your gaze to them when you reach the point of what you're saying. This creates intimacy without pressure, connection without intensity. The power of stillness. In a world of constant movement, people checking phones mid-conversation, shifting weight from foot to foot, reaching for their drinks to fill a pause, genuine stillness is almost startling. Magnetic people are still in a way that says, "I am here, only here, nowhere else." They don't fidget with their watches, they don't scan the room over your shoulder, they don't perform interest. They demonstrate it through the simple, radical act of not going anywhere. Practice stillness the next time someone is talking to you. Let them finish a complete thought before you respond. Resist the pull to fill every pause. Let the silence exist for a moment. You will be amazed at what people say when you give them space to say it. How to make anyone feel like the most important person in the room. Every single person you will ever meet is carrying something you can't see. The woman in the meeting who seems cold and dismissive. She got news last week that changed her family's life. The guy at the party who seems arrogant. He's convinced he's the least interesting person here and is overcompensating with volume. The colleague who never quite makes eye contact. He's been told his whole life that he's too much, too weird, too intense, and he's trying to take up less space. I'm not asking you to be a therapist. I'm asking you to walk into every interaction with the quiet awareness that the person in front of you is a complete universe, and you are only ever seeing the smallest corner of it. When you carry that awareness, your entire approach changes. You become softer, more patient, more genuinely interested, and people feel it, even when they can't articulate why. The listening upgrade. That changes everything. Most people listen to respond. They're 3 seconds ahead of the conversation, already formulating what they'll say next, barely hearing the end of your sentence. Magnetic people listen to understand, not just the words, but the emotion underneath the words, the need beneath the statement, the question that's hiding inside the answer. Psychologists call this empathic accuracy, the ability to hear what someone is actually saying, which is often different from what they're literally saying. When someone tells you they love their job, but it's been a little overwhelming lately, they're not asking for your productivity advice. They're asking to be seen. They're saying, "I'm struggling and I'm a little afraid to admit it." Magnetic people hear that. They don't fix it. They witness it. That sounds exhausting, especially if you're someone who holds yourself to high standards. That's it. That one sentence can open more genuine connection than an hour of problem solving. Questions that open doors. Most questions close doors. So, what do is a door closer. It invites a one-sentence response followed by an awkward transition. Questions that open doors are ones that invite the other person into their own inner world, not just the surface facts of their life. Instead of, "What do?" try, "What's something you're working on right now that you're genuinely excited about?" Instead of, "How was your weekend?" try, "What was the best moment of your week?" Instead of, "How long have you lived in New York?" try, "What keeps you here?" These questions are not magic spells. They're invitations. They say, "I'm not asking to check a box. I'm asking because I actually want to know what's going on inside your experience." And the follow-up is where the real magic happens. When someone answers one of these questions, most people respond with either a compliment or a redirect to their own experience. Magnetic people do something different. They go deeper. What is it about that project that excites you most? What drew you to that kind of work in the first place? Tell me more about that. You become unforgettable not because of what you say. You become unforgettable because you're the person who wanted to keep going. The art of reflection. When someone shares something meaningful with you, the most powerful response is often not an answer. It's a reflection, not a paraphrase. A reflection, identifying and naming the emotion beneath what they've just told you. That sounds like it meant a lot to you. I can hear how much that situation frustrated you. It seems like that was a real turning point. When you do this, when you name someone's emotion accurately, something neurological happens. Their nervous system calms. Their defenses lower. Their brain releases a small amount of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and they begin to feel genuinely safe with you. You haven't solved anything. You haven't offered anything. You've simply said, "I see you." And in a world where most people feel fundamentally invisible, that is everything. The conversation code, how to be unforgettable in any room. Conversations, like music, have a structure. Most people can't articulate it, but they feel it immediately when it's working, and they feel it immediately when it's not. Magnetic people have internalized the architecture of memorable conversation. They know how to build towards something, how to create moments, how to leave people with the feeling that this was the best conversation they've had all month, even if it was only 8 minutes long. Here's how they do it. Emotional labeling. Early in a conversation, instead of staying purely in the world of facts and information, name an emotion. Someone tells you they just started a new business. Instead of asking about their revenue model or their marketing strategy, you say, "That must be equal parts terrifying and exciting." Watch what happens. Their eyes change. They relax. They say, "Yes, exactly," because you've skipped the surface and gone directly to what the experience actually feels like. And that is where connection lives. Strategic vulnerability. There's a precise art to self-disclosure. Open up too fast and you make people uncomfortable. Never open up and people never quite trust you. The sweet spot is what I call graduated vulnerability, sharing something genuine, meaningful, and slightly imperfect about yourself, calibrated to the depth of the conversation and the trust that's been built. You don't share your deepest fears in the first 10 minutes, but you might share a mistake you made that taught you something, a belief you used to hold that turned out to be wrong, a moment when you were humbled, a dream you had that seemed embarrassing to admit. Strategic vulnerability does two things. First, it humanizes you. Second, and more importantly, it gives the other person permission. When you show them it's safe to be real here, they stop performing. And real connection can only happen between real people. The power of the pause. This might be the single most underused tool in human conversation. After someone says something significant, a confession, a revelation, a vulnerable truth, resist the urge to respond immediately. Pause. 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Let it land. That pause says, "What you just said mattered enough for me to actually sit with it." It also creates space for them to add something they might not have said if you'd rushed in with your response. Some of the most significant things people tell you will come in the half-breath after the pause. The reframe. When someone is stuck in a story about themselves, a problem they can't solve, a pattern they can't escape, a criticism they can't shake, magnetic people don't just validate the story. They gently offer a different lens, not dismissively, not with toxic positivity, with genuine curiosity about another angle. I hear how draining that situation is. I'm also curious. Is there anything that challenge has been revealing to you about yourself? This reframe doesn't invalidate their experience. It expands it. It turns a conversation from complaint into exploration, from problem to possibility. And people remember you as the person who helped them see something they couldn't see before. Conversation seeds. Before you leave any meaningful interaction, plant something forward-looking. I want to hear how that presentation goes. When you finish that book, will you tell me what you thought? I hope you'll let me know how that trip turns out. These aren't small talk. They're investments in a future conversation. They signal, I'm not just being polite, I'm actually interested in the continuation of your life. People don't forget that. The invisible influence system. How to make people want to help you. Here's a truth most people find uncomfortable. Influence has nothing to do with pushing people toward your agenda. Real influence, the kind that lasts, the kind that creates loyalty, the kind that makes people genuinely want to help you, is entirely about alignment. You're not moving people in a direction they don't want to go. You're helping them see how the direction you're suggesting connects to something they already want. This is not manipulation. Manipulation is about exploiting people's psychology against their interests. What we're talking about is understanding human psychology well enough to serve both parties effectively. Here are the core principles. Psychological ownership. When people feel they've had a hand in creating something, they become emotionally invested in its success. Instead of presenting a fully formed request, I need you to help me with X, invite the other person into the thinking. I'm wrestling with a challenge and I trust your judgment. What would you do in this situation? Now they're a collaborator, not a favor granter. They're invested. And people work 10 times harder for something they helped build than for something that was handed to them. The reciprocity long game humans are hardwired for reciprocity. When someone does something for us, we feel a genuine psychological pull to return it. This is evolution's social glue. Most people use this instinct clumsily, doing something nice and immediately asking for something back, which makes the gift feel transactional and hollow. Magnetic people play a longer game. They give freely. Time, attention, introductions, information, genuine encouragement, without keeping score, without expectation, without an invoice. Then, when they do need something, the accumulated goodwill is already there. And the person they ask doesn't feel manipulated. They feel glad to reciprocate. Consistency, alignment. People have a powerful drive to remain consistent with their previous statements and values. If someone has told you they care about creativity, framing a proposal as a creative challenge makes it almost irresistible. If they've told you they value family, connecting your suggestion to family. Well-being makes it land differently. You're not inventing an angle. You're finding the genuine connection between what they care about and what you're proposing. And when that connection is real, when it actually serves them, saying yes feels like integrity, not compromise. Graceful acceptance of no. This is underrated to an almost criminal degree. How you respond to rejection determines more about your future influence with someone than almost anything else. When magnetic people hear no, they respond with something like, I completely understand. Thank you for being straight with me about that. No guilt, no pressure, no visible disappointment that makes the other person feel responsible for their feelings. This graceful acceptance of no is paradoxically one of the most powerful things you can do, because it communicates. I respect your autonomy. I'm not here to push you. And people who feel respected, not pressured, are dramatically more likely to see yes next time. Body language mastery. What your body is saying when you're not listening. Your body tells the truth even when your words are lying. Every micro-expression, every postural shift, every unconscious gesture is being processed by the people around you at a level below conscious thought. And most of the time, the story your body is telling is completely different from the story you think you're telling. The good news: the gap between your body's broadcast and your intended message can be closed, not by learning to perform different body language that always looks fake, but by changing your internal state so that your body naturally expresses what you actually want to convey. The centered body. Start here. Where is your weight? People who are nervous tend to be forward on their feet, literally leaning toward the future, bracing against uncertainty. People who are defeated tend to be back on their heels, shrinking from engagement. People who are performing confidence tend to be rigid, standing at attention, which reads not as confident but as anxious about appearing confident. Centered, magnetic people are simply balanced, weight evenly distributed, spine naturally tall without being stiff, shoulders settled, not pinned back. The image is a tree in mild wind, stable at the roots, flexible at the branches. Practice this. Stand with your feet hip-width apart. Close your eyes, take 2 deep breaths, and let your shoulders fall naturally. That's your centered posture. It's not a performance. It's a rest state. Gestures that amplify, not distract. In a culture where everyone's watched TED Talks and read about power poses, there's a lot of terrible, obvious gesture advice floating around. Here's the real standard. Your gestures should emerge from your communication, not be applied to it. When you're genuinely engaged and expressive, your hands naturally reinforce your meaning. When you're performing gestures you've been taught, they always look slightly off, like someone who learned to smile from a diagram. The fix isn't better gestures. It's more genuine engagement. When you care about what you're saying, your body expresses it automatically. Your face is always on stage. Your face broadcasts your internal state in real time, with a latency of about 200 milliseconds. By the time you realize you've had an emotional reaction, your face has already announced it. The most magnetic faces are not controlled faces. They're responsive faces. Faces that move naturally with the conversation, that show genuine reactions, that don't hold a single fixed expression like a customer service mask. Genuine expressiveness is attractive because it signals presence and authenticity. It says, what's happening here is actually affecting me. I'm not just going through the motions. The rapport blueprint. Creating trust in minutes rapport is the invisible bridge between two human beings. When it's there, everything flows. Conversation, collaboration, influence, even conflict resolution. When it's absent, everything requires 10 times the effort. The extraordinary thing about rapport is that it operates almost entirely below the level of conscious awareness. You don't decide to feel rapport with someone. Your nervous system decides, based on 1,000 tiny signals exchanged in the first few minutes of interaction, which means it can be intentionally initiated. Pacing before leading. The foundation of rapport building is a deceptively simple principle. Match before you lead. If someone is speaking quickly, energetically, with high animation, meet them there first. Then, as the conversation progresses, you can gradually shift the tempo to wherever you want to go and they'll follow. If someone is measured, thoughtful, quiet, slow down and match their cadence. Don't impose your energy, join theirs, and then lead. This isn't mimicry, it's attunement. There's a difference between copying someone and genuinely adjusting to their rhythm, and people can feel the difference. Sensory language. Pay attention to the types of sensory metaphors people use. Some people are visual. They say things like, I see what you mean, or that doesn't look right to me, or let me paint you a picture. Some people are auditory. They say, that sounds right, or I hear you, or that rings true. Some are kinesthetic. They say, I can't quite grasp that, or this feels off, or that sits well with me. When you reflect their sensory language back to them, not mockingly but naturally, they experience an unconscious click of recognition. This person speaks my language, and they feel, without knowing why, that you understand them. Emotional state bridging. One of the most important rapport skills is knowing how to handle someone who is in a negative emotional state. If a friend calls you furious about something, or a colleague comes to you stressed and overwhelmed, the worst thing you can do is immediately try to fix it, reframe it, or talk them out of it. That approach lands as dismissiveness. The right move is to join them emotionally before leading them somewhere better. Not all the way into their state. Don't become furious with them, but enough to signal, I'm not above what you're feeling. I understand it. That sounds genuinely infuriating. I completely get why you're reacting this way. And then, from that place of shared ground, you can begin to gently open other doors. Trust through consistency. All the techniques in the world build rapport in a first conversation, but sustained influence, the kind that creates real loyalty and lasting connection, is built through one thing above all else: doing what you said you would do. Trust is constructed through 1,000 small moments of follow-through. You said you'd send that article, and you sent it. You said you'd think about what they shared, and at your next meeting, you referenced it. You said you'd be there, and you were. Consistency, over time, is the deepest form of respect you can show another person, and it is shockingly rare. Turning difficult people into allies. The advanced skill. Nobody teaches every magnetic person at some point runs into someone who doesn't seem to want to be won over. The hostile coworker. The critic who takes every opportunity to diminish you. The client who seems determined to be unsatisfied. The family member who's made being difficult into a personality trait. This is the advanced level, and how you handle it is what separates the genuinely magnetic from the merely charming. Emotional Aikido is a martial art based on a radical idea. Instead of meeting force with force, you redirect it. The attacker's momentum becomes their undoing. You don't resist, you receive, and you guide. The emotional equivalent is this: when someone comes at you with aggression, hostility, or unfair criticism, instead of defending or counterattacking, you receive the emotion and reflect it back without being pulled into it. I can see this situation has been really frustrating for you. Help me understand what's at the core of it. That question, help me understand, is one of the most powerful tools in human interaction. It de-escalates. It communicates, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to understand. And people who expect a fight are almost always disarmed by genuine curiosity. Finding the grain of truth. In almost every unfair criticism, there is a kernel of something real. Even if the delivery is wrong, even if the proportion is distorted, even if the motivation behind the criticism is less than pure, there is usually something in it that deserves acknowledgement. Find it, name it. You're right that I could have communicated that more clearly. This is not weakness. This is maturity. And it accomplishes something remarkable. It breaks the adversarial frame. Suddenly, you're no longer opponents. You're two people trying to solve the same problem. Boundaries with dignity. Being magnetic doesn't mean being a doormat. There is a firm, unequivocal line between being open and receptive and accepting abuse. You can set boundaries with absolute firmness while maintaining absolute respect for the other person's humanity. I want to have a productive conversation about this, and I need us to speak to each other respectfully in order to do that. Can we agree on that? Notice what that does. It names the condition. It frames it as mutual, us speaking respectfully, not you calming down. And it invites agreement rather than issuing a demand. That's magnetic boundary setting. The patience long game. Some difficult people won't be won over in a single conversation. Some won't be won over in a month. Magnetic people play a longer game. They understand that consistently responding with maturity, respect, and genuine curiosity, even when it's not immediately reciprocated, is a form of quiet power. Because difficult behavior is, at its root, often a test. Are you actually this genuine? Or is this going to fade? When you consistently show up the same way, open, grounded, respectful, even the most defended person eventually starts to believe you. Social intelligence, reading the room, everyone else misses. There are people who walk into a room and, within 5 minutes, understand the political landscape, the emotional climate, the informal power dynamics, and the unspoken tensions, with a level of precision that seems almost supernatural. This is advanced social intelligence, and while it does require practice, it is not a gift. It's a set of skills. Reading baselines and deviations. The fundamental skill of social intelligence is baseline awareness. Every person has a natural, normal range of behavior, their default energy level, their typical facial expressiveness, their usual way of holding their body. When someone deviates significantly from their baseline, something is happening. The normally gregarious person who's gone quiet. The usually steady executive who's suddenly stiff and over-controlled. The friend who laughs slightly too loud at something that wasn't that funny. When you notice these deviations, don't diagnose them. Just note them. File them away. And when the moment is right, create space for what might be underneath. You seem a little different today. Everything okay? That simple observation can open conversations that profoundly deepen relationships. Group dynamics. Every group has an informal architecture. There are people whose opinions carry disproportionate weight, not because of their title, but because of their social credibility. There are gatekeepers who control access to key relationships and opportunities. There are connectors who bring different social circles into contact. Socially intelligent people learn to read these structures quickly. Who does everyone else look to when a decision needs to be made? Who speaks first? And whose first comment changes the direction of the conversation? Who sits quietly but whose rare contributions land with unusual weight? Understanding this architecture doesn't mean you play politics in a cynical sense. It means you navigate more effectively. You know whose buy-in actually matters, whose concerns need addressing early, and who to build rapport with before you need anything. The unspoken rules. Every social environment has scripts, unwritten codes that govern what's appropriate, what's expected, and what crosses a line. A team meeting in a Boston financial firm has different rules than a creative brainstorm at a startup in Austin. A family Thanksgiving dinner has different codes than a work happy hour. What's warm and disarming in one context is inappropriate in another. Socially intelligent people read these codes quickly and naturally. They know when humor is welcome and when it would land wrong. They know when to challenge and when to build consensus. They know when to be the most interesting person in the room and when to be the best listener. And occasionally, with surgical precision, they know when breaking the script creates a breakthrough. A single vulnerable admission in a room full of people performing professional composure can transform the entire dynamic of a meeting. The magnetic life. Designing attraction into everything you do. Here's what nobody tells you about charisma. The most magnetic people don't do magnetism. They live it. Their attractiveness isn't a separate layer applied on top of their real life. It's the natural output of how they've designed their life as a whole. Their relationships, their work, their growth practices, their health habits, their values, all of it flows outward as a kind of radiance. This chapter is about designing a life that generates magnetism automatically. Depth and passion. Magnetic people are fascinating to talk to because they have something to talk about, not because they've curated interesting-sounding hobbies for social purposes, but because they've actually gone deep on things they genuinely love. Whether it's astrophysics or competitive barbecue, mid-century furniture or jazz composition, or the history of the Byzantine Empire, the people who know something deeply and who love what they know are endlessly compelling. Go deep. Find the things that genuinely fascinate you and follow them further than feel sensible. The depth you develop becomes the depth you bring to every conversation. Physical and mental foundation. You cannot be consistently magnetic when you're running on empty. Sleep-deprived, chronically stressed, physically depleted people, however brilliant, however charming, cannot sustain the kind of presence that genuine magnetism requires. Your capacity for empathy, curiosity, patience, and presence is directly tied to how well your nervous system is functioning. This is not a vanity point. It's a practical one. Taking care of your body and your mental health is not separate from becoming magnetic. It's one of the core practices. Social richness. Magnetism cannot be built in isolation. It requires an ecosystem. The more diverse, genuine, and nourishing your social life, the less desperate you become for any single connection to work out. When your social needs are being met across multiple relationships and communities, you can approach any individual interaction from true abundance, curious, warm, unhurried, because nothing about this one interaction determines the entire state of your social life. Build width and depth. Maintain friendships across different areas of your life. Join communities aligned with your genuine interests. Keep meeting new people, not because you're networking, but because human variety is endlessly interesting. The contribution imperative magnetic people are almost universally involved in something larger than themselves. Whether it's their professional work, a cause they care about, creative work they're committed to, or simple daily acts of genuine service to the people in their lives, they're oriented outward, toward contribution, toward impact, toward leaving the people and places they touch in slightly better condition than they found them. This contribution consciousness does something profound. It gives you a reason for being in any room that has nothing to do with how you come across. You're not there to impress. You're there to be useful. And that orientation, quiet, genuine, consistent, is felt by everyone. Networks, building a world that multiplies your influence. Your network is not a Rolodex. It's a living ecosystem, constantly growing, shifting, generating new possibilities and new responsibilities. The most magnetic people don't just have networks. They tend to them the way a skilled gardener tends to a garden, with attention, with patience, with genuine care for what grows. Leading with value. Every meaningful network relationship starts the same way, with giving before asking. Not because you're a martyr or because you expect repayment, but because you understand that the most durable relationships are built on genuine mutual benefit. And that benefit almost always starts with someone taking the first step. Share useful information. Make thoughtful introductions. Offer your expertise without billing for it. Celebrate other people's wins publicly and genuinely. Be the person in the room who's clearly for the people around them. Over time, you become something incredibly valuable, a node of trust. People think of you when they want to make a good introduction. They mention your name in rooms you're not in. They bring you opportunities not because they owe you, but because they want you involved. The super connector role. The most powerful position in any network is not the highest status. It's the best connected. Super connectors, people who actively, thoughtfully introduce others to each other when there's genuine mutual benefit, occupy the center of social and professional value creation. Every introduction they make strengthens two relationships simultaneously. Over time, they become indispensable to everyone. Become a super connector, not by introducing people randomly, but by paying enough attention to what people need and what people offer, that you can see the possibilities others missed. You should know each other, said at the right moment about the right two people, might be the most powerful sentence in professional life. Weak ties and long games research consistently shows that career breakthroughs, unexpected opportunities, and pivotal connections often come through weak ties, people you don't see frequently but with whom you've maintained a loose, warm connection. The college roommate you haven't seen in 8 years, but whose work you've kept a quiet eye on. The conference acquaintance you've exchanged 2 emails with, but who you genuinely like. The former colleague you ran into at an airport and had a real conversation with. These connections are disproportionately valuable because they bridge different worlds. Your close network largely knows the same people and the same opportunities. Your weak ties connect you to entirely different ecosystems. Maintain them. A brief, genuine note once every 6 months is enough. Saw this and thought of you. That's it. Protecting your magnetism, the traps that erode what you build. You can spend years building genuine magnetism and then quietly lose it through a series of small, almost invisible habits and patterns. This chapter is about the erosion, the silent killers of attraction. Success. Complacency. When achievement comes, many people stop doing the things that made them successful. They become less curious, less other-focused, more attached to their status than to their growth. The antidote is a permanent commitment to the beginner's mind, staying genuinely curious, genuinely humble, genuinely interested in learning from everyone. Neediness creep. Even emotionally healthy people can gradually drift toward needing validation, especially during difficult seasons of life. Watch for the signs. Requiring reassurance more frequently. Becoming sensitive to how others respond to you. Talking about yourself more and asking about others less. When you notice these patterns, redirect, reconnect to your internal sources of stability. Social script rigidity. Some people develop excellent social skills and then use them mechanically without adaptation. They become predictable, running the same routines with everyone, regardless of context. The antidote is staying genuinely present. Each person is different. Each moment is different. Be responsive, not formulaic. The negativity drift. Life accumulates disappointments. And if you don't actively process them, they begin to color everything. Your humor turns cynical. Your observations become critical. Your energy becomes draining. Others start to feel that spending time with you is slightly exhausting. Guard your overall relationship with life. Protect your sense of wonder. Authenticity, abandonment, perhaps the most insidious erosion. Some people, in their pursuit of social effectiveness, gradually lose touch with their actual self. They begin performing a version of magnetism rather than living it. They optimize for others' approval rather than their own values. And the deeper they go into performance, the more hollow they become. Stay tethered to who you actually are, your real opinions, your genuine enthusiasms, your authentic reactions. Magnetism that departs from authenticity is just charisma theater, and it doesn't last. Your new identity, the people magnet, you've already become. We've come a long way from that happy hour in Chicago. You remember? The person across the room that everyone gravitated toward? The person you watched from the appetizer table, wondering what they had that you didn't? Here's what's changed. You now know. It wasn't some mysterious gift. It was a set of internal orientations and practice skills that you now understand at a level most people will never reach. You know what presence actually is and how to develop it. You know how to listen in a way that makes people feel seen. You know how to create rapport in minutes, guide conversations toward meaning, influence with integrity, and hold your ground with difficult people while remaining magnetic. But I want to leave you with something that goes deeper than skills. The identity shift that seals everything. All of this, every principle, every technique, every chapter, is pointing toward a single transformation. A shift from a person who hopes to be liked to a person who naturally makes others' lives better. Those are not the same thing. The person who hopes to be liked is always monitoring, always adjusting, always slightly anxious about the verdict. The person who is oriented toward making others' lives better is simply present, doing the work, bringing value, and occasionally, as a natural byproduct, without effort or performance, being profoundly liked. The first identity is exhausting. It never fully works because neediness is repellent no matter how well you hide it. The second identity is sustainable. It's renewable. It compounds. And it doesn't require you to be someone you're not. Your new social reality, when this identity becomes yours, really yours, integrated into how you naturally move through the world, several things shift permanently. You walk into rooms differently. Not because you're performing confidence, but because you're genuinely curious about what's going to happen in this room, who you're going to meet, what you're going to learn. You listen differently, not waiting for your turn, but genuinely interested in the complete, complex human being in front of you. You give differently, not keeping score, not performing generosity for social credit, but from the genuine overflow of a life lived in abundance. You handle difficulty differently, not by shrinking from conflict or forcing your way through it, but with the steady, grounded patience of someone who has nothing to prove. You build differently. Relationships, networks, opportunities, all of it built on the foundation of genuine value, genuine respect, genuine care. The gift you give. Here's the final truth I want to leave with you. When you become genuinely magnetic, when you do the inner work, build the real skills, and commit to showing up as your most authentic and generous self, you are not just changing your social outcomes. You are changing the experience of every person you interact with. The colleague who walks away from a 3-minute conversation with you feeling like their problem is solvable. The stranger at a conference who feels, for the first time in months, genuinely heard. The person at the party who felt invisible until you sat down next to them and asked a real question. These moments might seem small. They are not. They compound in the lives of everyone they touch. And they come back to you, not as tactical returns on investment, but as the deep, soul-level satisfaction of knowing that your presence in the world genuinely matters. That's the real reason to become magnetic, not to win rooms, not to close deals, not to accumulate influence, but because you have the capacity to make the human beings around you feel less alone, more seen, more capable of their own lives. And that capacity, used daily, is one of the most extraordinary things a person can do. Go use it. The most magnetic thing you can ever be is the person who made someone else feel magnificent.